Thank you very much, Christina. Our next speaker is from Novartis, Christina Bucci-Rechtweg, and we'll give a Novartis perspective.
Thank you. And so I just wanted to give the disclaimer that with Novartis, my role is as the Global Head of Pediatric and Maternal Health Policy. So actually everything I do in my role from minute to minute, day to day, week to week is to understand how we should be going about doing better within policy considerations to advance pediatric research. And as I listened to the first session, I realized that the presentation that I had put together related to PROs really needed to be completely revised as I was sitting back there. So apologies to the folks sitting next to me as I worked on my computer to rewrite what I was going to talk to you about right now. And I wanted to do that because I think there were some very critical pieces that were raised in the first session about how do we tie together these critically important pieces with PROs to how we should be moving forward with policy initiatives. So I think, as has already been mentioned, there are quite a few challenges related to therapeutic research and pediatric drug development. You already know about the low incidence of disease. Also, too, important to understand that our current industry models focused on research and development are not favorable to pediatric drug development. And why is that? It's because they're entirely focused on the adult drug development model. So everything we're doing in pediatrics, frankly, from within the industry perspective, is from a drug-centric approach and not a disease-centric approach. However, I think there are some wonderful things that are in our favor right now for pediatric oncology and pediatric drug development in general, and that is because there is an unprecedented pace of discovery in both genomic medicine and the understanding of tumor biology. This is important because now you see, as was very nicely pointed out in your presentation, that there are molecular and genomic targeted therapies that are being developed, which is an incredible opportunity for us, as even our president is mentioning, for precision medicine. So what does that mean for industry? Well, over the course of the last 10 years, innovator companies have already transitioned their portfolios to focus their commercial and scientific sites on molecular and genomic targets. This bodes much better for children, especially children with cancer, as an opportunity, is the approach to drug development now is identifying means of developing therapies to address unmet medical need where there is scientific tractability. And there is no field that is better suited to help us with those advances than in oncology. We are paces ahead of the rest of the disease areas. So how can we learn from successes that are already there in other drug development arenas? It was already mentioned in the earlier session about orphan drug development. And what should we be doing with pediatric oncology to take advantage of the orphan regulatory environment to advance our opportunities? So Dr. Riemann, you already mentioned that there's currently no legislative fix, but there's a couple of things we need to keep in mind. FDASIA just made permanent those fixes that are there to help us with incentives and obligations. So I would say that likely within the policy sphere, it's going to be difficult to make immediate changes from a legislative standpoint. And also, too, it's important to understand, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Congress is not going to choose winners and losers. Therefore, when we think about oncology advances in policy, we have to think about it in the bigger scope of disease for children. So the current incentives that are in place, they're focused on commercial drivers, patent extensions, market exclusivity, data exclusivity. And that's not helpful because it's actually benefiting companies at the end of their life cycle, and also it's for small molecules. We just mentioned we're now developing therapies for targeted therapies. Also, too, there's economic constraints that do not favor prolonging the advancement of a generic into the marketplace. So we need to move on. We're ignoring R&D drivers right now, and that's where we need to focus our attention, and that's where PROs come into play. So for PROs, what industry needs to do is work closer with children, families, advocates, investigators, and regulators to understand what domains are relevant to facilitating early drug development that can help us to make regulatory decisions. And so we'll need to address a few questions. Number one, how should we look at QOL domains in both the acute phases of the disease and looking into the long term? Are we even looking at the right domains? Is there something entirely different we should be focusing on? How do we focus the attention of those involved in drug development on the importance of developing reliable and validated pediatric PROs? And then, how can we engage within the policy arena to facilitate drug development by de-risking early development with those tools that we have now developed? So thank you for your time.